Hey there pixelators, Joshua here, and in this video we're going to talk about one of the most commonly used UI elements, the tabs. We're going to also demonstrate how to use it as well as how we can customize it based on our own needs, so do stay tuned for that. If you like this video or you see that this video has been useful for you, please don't hesitate to leave a like as well as to click that subscribe button below. Again, without further ado, let us begin. So in our previous video, what we were left with was the carousel, right? So we created our own carousel, which is this one, which right now has 4 slides, as well as we tried customizing it in a manner of adding our own V model as well as adding its own navigational buttons over here. We also tried moving them around as well as to try and change the alignment of the navigation itself. In our previous video also, we explored how we can display different types of content based on what we like. For example, we added an image, we added also the video, as well as we customized the controls themselves. So with that previous video, what we did was we created a lot of opportunities for customizing the carousel based on our own needs. So this time, what we're going to talk about is tabs. So like I said earlier in the intro, tabs are one of the most commonly used UI elements in a typical application. Also, based on Quasar's definition, tabs are a way of displaying more information using less window real estate. So in a sense, it is a way of categorizing your content and also a way of decluttering the screen itself. If you have a lot of content to display, you can try implementing, or rather, you can try separating them inside tabs. So aside from those, you can also customize your own content, or rather, you can implement custom features and functionalities using this component here. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to implement it first and then see what we can do with it, and then we can try customizing it based on our own needs. So in order to implement a QTab, what you need to do first is you need to create a QTabs element, which is this one. Also, if you created a QTabs element, in order to display additional tabs inside the QTabs element itself, what we're going to do, or what we need to do, is to add a QTab element. So if every time we add a QTab element, selection item appears on the QTabs panel itself. So in order to demonstrate, we're going to try it ourselves. First, in order to implement a QTab, we need a div. Now, why is that? We need to add a div because our current space, as you can clearly see right here, is kind of cluttered. So we're going to declutter it a bit by creating our own space. So in order to do that, what we can do is we're going to add another div up here. So now that we have our own div up here, what we can do next is we're going to add the QTabs elements itself. So if we go back here, you can see that we simply add a QTabs and then we bind a vmodel to it. And then next we add the QTabs themselves. So in order to implement that on our side, what we can do is we add the QTabs and then we bind a vmodel to it. And then now that we have a vmodel, let's set a vmodel data below. So you have the carousel here. So let's append the tabs here. Let's say for the value of tabs, what we can put initially is the name of the tab itself. So in our case, what we can try is we can add, let's say, home. And let's just imitate the carousel behavior instead. So now that we have a home vmodel for this one, we can now append the tabs vmodel inside of it, like this. So now the QTabs has a vmodel of tabs. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to create QTab. So basically, we're going to add a tab inside the tabs element. So next, what we're going to add is the name itself. What we mean by name? When you set a name, that is what the vmodel uses as a reference. So in this case, let's set it to home, and then let's add a label that says home. And then let's add an icon which says home. Now, if we do that, what we're going to have is our very basic tab here. For now, what you can see is a single tab only. Next, what we need to do is, instead of having a single tab here, we can add another tab. So in order to do that, we simply imitate this one. We change the name into, let's say, mail, and then we change the label to mail, as well as we change the icon itself. So if we do that, we're going to have another QTab element here. So now you can see that we have 2 elements, right? So lastly, we're going to add the last element. So in this case, you can have as many as you want, not necessarily limited to 3. But for the purpose of this video, what we're going to do is we're going to limit it to 3. So now that we have the mail, let's have a recent. And then let's label it as recent. Then let's use this as recent. I'm not sure if that icon works. So it did not. So let's see. Let's try, okay. What icon can I use? Let's try the alarms instead. Okay, so let's use the alarms. So now that we have alarms here, we can see that we now have 3 tabs right here. Right? So this is the most basic example of a QTab. Now that we have a basic QTab working, what we can do next is we're going to customize it a bit. So you will notice that the QTabs are a bit small. So maybe we can try making them bigger. Let's say text h2. Okay. Okay, so we can do that. Maybe we can not make it a bit bigger. Let's see. So for the QTabs, in order to make it a little bit bigger, let's see. Let's have the BG color indicator. Okay. Okay, so I think it is not resizable. So anyway, aside from making it resizable, we can modify it later on instead in a different manner. Now that we have our basic tab here, we can customize it to our full extent. So that's what we were talking about in the introduction earlier. Before I begin this, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment down below. Do you have difficulties implementing this one, or are you having a hard time implementing the QTabs? Let us know in the comment section. So we'll help you and we'll cater to your needs. So please don't hesitate. Now that we're going to style our elements, first, in order to customize it, one way of customizing this one or the QTab itself is adding the arrows. So as you can see, we have navigation arrows right here. So in order to implement that, we need to simply add the outside arrows. So in our QTabs here, we need to add a property. Now that we have the outside arrows, what's it going to do is, you will see that there are arrows like this one. So in order for us to do that as well, we need to add the outside arrows. And then we need to force our container to have a smaller size. So let's style it. Let's say max width is around 200 pixels. That should force it to shrink like so. Now that it has shrunk, it is forced to create a arrow in order to slide to the left and to the right, as you can see right here. So that is what the outside arrows does. It allows you to navigate your tabs to the left or to the right based on where you click the arrow. Next, what we can do also is we can have a arrow for the mobile version. As you can see in their example, since we're on the desktop mode, we can't see any arrows right here. But if you go to a mobile app, you will notice that the arrows will appear right around here. So we have a mobile feature as well as a desktop feature. So it caters both platforms. Next, aside from having a horizontal QTab, you can also have a vertical QTab. So in order to implement a vertical QTab, you simply need to add a vertical property. In order to make it vertical, let's add a vertical property. If we do that, what's going to happen is it's going to render in a vertical mode, like this one. In a vertical manner, that's what it's going to look like. So in their example, they created a custom vslot. So when you click this one, they change the content. But focus more on the vertical aspect instead of this one. This is just a container for their content. We can also have our own one later. Next is the dense property. So what is dense? Mostly, there are instances that your content is somewhat, or rather you have a very small real estate for content. What do we mean by that? Meaning, you either have a small screen or you don't have that much space left to display content. So in this case, the dense property is going to help you a lot. What it does is it compresses the paddings in between tabs in order to make it more accommodating in terms of space. So if we turn this back to normal, you will see that the dense property has shrunk them a little bit compared to the one without the dense property. As you can see, there's a bit of space around here, right? But if we move the dense property back, we're going to have it around here. So we have a we have a smaller space consumption in terms of components. So aside from having the dense property, you can also have individual colors per tabs. So that means you can customize your tabs in a way that each tab is unique in its own. So in order to do that, what we can do is we need to simply add a class. Let's say bg red, and then let's set this one to, let's say, bg green, and then, or let's say orange, and then let's set this one to, let's say, bg green. It's just like a traffic light. So once we do that, what we're going to have is this one. So in order to see it more, or in order to see more of the content, let's remove the div for a bit. Now, as you can see, each tab of ours has its own background color. So aside from that, you can also go haywire with the text itself. So for the text colors, let's do the opposite. Instead of green, let's have a text red. For the orange, let's have a text white. And then for the red, let's have a text green. Once we do that, what's going to happen is the text themselves change. So now you have a red text here, you have a white text here, and then you have a green text right here. So as you will notice, you can customize them the way you want them to in a very customizable way. So aside from customizing the tabs themselves, you can also customize them individually based on your needs. Next, you have the ripple. Now, what does ripple do? Ripple is basically, as you will notice, every time I click, there is an animation happening, right? So that is what the ripple effect does. It's like tipping the dip of a water pond. What happens is you have a ripple, right? So that's what it basically does. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to implement it in our own QTabs. So in order to add that, you simply need to append a ripple property. So if you take a look here, you see that the ripple is false, right? But once you click this, nothing happens, right? Because we set the ripple property to false. But on the other example, you set the ripple and then you choose the color you want to use. So in our case, what we're going to do is we're going to use the, let's try the orange for now. So in order to do that, you simply need to grab the, okay. So here, let's go back here. In order to implement that, we simply need to add a ripple property. And then let's add a object. Let's say color orange. What's it going to do is it's going to add a ripple effect with a specific color. So we implemented it in the first QTab. So if I click the first QTab, you will notice that there is a ripple effect happening. But on the other tabs, you will notice that they all have the same appearance as well. So that means if you apply a QTab ripple effect on the first one, the other elements also retain its properties. So in order to make sure that everyone appears the same, we're going to add this ripple effect on all of those QTabs. So once we do that, you will notice that every time I click here, the effect appears as well. So that means all of them are affected by the ripple effect. Next, what we're going to have is a custom indicator. So you will see that in this one, yes. So what they mean by the custom indicator is you will see this thin line right here, right? So this very thin line is what they call the indicator. So for the custom indicator, you need to simply add an indicator color in order to change its color. And then in order to change its position from the bottom to the top, you simply need to add the switch indicator parameter. So if we do that, let's combine both those two. Let's add the switch indicator and then let's add the indicator color of, let's say, blue. Something like this one. And then what we're going to have is the indicator is going to appear upwards and it is colored as blue. Since we can't see it that clear, let's remove the classes for now. Let's see. Like this. Okay. So now that we have our classes here, okay. So if you click here, as you can see, the color is blue. So we can change that. Instead of blue, we can use, let's say, red. So it's going to get colored as red. But if we remove the switch indicator parameter, it goes from top to the bottom. So let's retain that for now. So basically, that's how you add a custom indicator or how you customize the custom indicator. So do you have any questions so far? Are you confused as to how to use all these features and these parameters and design elements? If you do, please leave a comment down below and then we'll assist you in any way that we can. Do you like what you see so far? You can also leave a comment down below, or if you see that this component is a very useful component, for your case. Going back, now that we have covered the custom indicator, what we're going to have now is the tab notifications. So for the tab notifications, this is the chip thing that you will notice mostly in a tab. So tab notifications is basically the small chip on the top of an icon. So in order to implement that, what you need to do is, rather, instead of having a single element here, rather we have a closing element here, and then let's add a Q badge. Let's say, now that we have a Q badge, let's set it to red, and then let's set it as floating. Now that we have that, what we're going to add is, let's say, the number. So let's have 2. So in this case, what we need, if we implement this one, what's going to happen is we're going to have a Q badge inside of our QTab itself. So what means once we do that, you're going to have this number 2 around here. So now it indicates that you have a 2, or rather you have 2 mails. So it is useful for adding those notification badges or those stuff which are useful for indicating notifications in this case. Aside from numbers, you can also have your custom rollout of, let's say, badge. So in this case, you simply add the alert property. If you add the alert property, what's going to happen is, instead of this one, you have the Q badge. What's going to happen if you do that is, you're going to have this small dot right here to indicate that something is going on with this tab. That is how you implement a tab notification for each tab. So that means each tab can have its own notification badges. Aside from those, you also have the alignment, in case you want to align the tab elements together. In this case, you can align them to the left, like this one. You can align them to the center, which is this one. You can align them as well to the right, which is this one, or you can justify them, meaning we're going to take up the space evenly. So this is one of the examples of setting alignment for the QTabs. So aside from that, you can also have a QTab with a drop-down feature, as you can see right here. So in order to implement a drop-down as a tab, you need to add a Q button drop-down for that. And then inside the Q button drop-down, you're going to add a Q list with a Q item for each item in your drop-down. So think of it as akin to a button. So in this case, let's add a Q button drop down. Let's say, I think I don't need a model value. So let's grab this one. So let's set that as parameters, and then let's add a Q list. So we have a Q list, and then for every Q list, you have a Q item, right? So it is a clickable item, of course. Now that we have a clickable item, what we're going to do next is we're going to add an item section to it. So let's grab the item section and then append them to the middle, like this one. So like that. Next, we can add another item, let's say photos. So let's just grab this one and then let's put it here. Let's remove the click element because we don't need that for now. So let's remove this closing one and then let's align this to the proper alignment. And now you have a button drop down inside a QTab. So as you can see, you have a drop down inside your tab like this one, right? So that is how you implement a drop down inside a tab. Aside from that, you can also use the QTabs on a Qtoolbar, as you can see in this example they provided. So this entire bar here is a Qtoolbar, and inside a Qtoolbar they added a QTab. So if you take a look at the code, here's the QTab, and then here's the Qtoolbar. So as you will notice, they have an entire QTab right here, and then here's the homepage button, as you can see on the left. Aside from that, you can also have a QTab, or rather you can have a QTab that updates dynamically, as you can see here. Every time I check this specific, let's say, choices, the QTab also updates. So based on this example, you can see that QTabs is not as static as it seems. So it is, in a sense, customizable based on your needs, as well as programmable based on your certain needs as well. So aside from using it in a Qtoolbar, you can also use it alongside a QTabsPanel. Now, QTabsPanel is another component of Quasar, which serves as the bread and butter in terms of displaying tabs and tab items. So we're going to talk about this one in the next video. And then lastly, your QTab can also be used as a way for navigating. What do I mean by that? Your QTab has a built-in route feature by simply adding a route, meaning you create a tab that is at the same time a router. So that is a pretty useful feature for creating those navigation buttons for the mobile version. You know that the footer part of most mobile applications that have clickable items on the bottom, right? So that is one example of a use for the QRouteTab, which is this component right here. And then lastly, you can also handle the custom navigation for your QTabs by simply adding a route object to your QRoute tab, or rather QRoute tab. So if you click this one, you're going to go to a certain route with a specific query like this one, and so on and so forth. And then you have some JavaScript here in order to set the navigation themselves. Thank you for watching this video, everyone. I hope you see that this video has been useful for you and has helped you gain insight on how to use Quasar's tab elements, or rather the tab components. It is one of the most powerful components, or one of the most commonly used elements in a Quasar component, because it is typically used on mobile phones or mobile applications, but it is not limited to such usage. It can also be used on websites. As you can see, you may notice that some websites have their tabs, or some systems have tabs enabled, or rather have tab functionalities in their UI. So again, please don't forget to leave a like as well as to click that subscribe button to get notified, as well as to get the latest updates whenever we upload new tutorials. You may also get notified. For the next video, what we're going to talk about is the tab panels, which is a continuation of Quasar's tab feature. So again, this is Joshua from Pixelate. See you later, Pixelators!